Okay, you guys, let's do this. It's going to be so professional. Like, so professional. Here we go. Welcome to the Live Support Podcast with your hosts, Michele and June, a couple of clean comedians who support each other and others through comedy's wacky and winding roads. I hope you're ready. Get set. Let's go. Since podcasts have a catchy tune, we wrote this song for Michele and June. Clean comedians are best friends too. Oh, so good. And you never know what they'll say or do. Here we go, sing with me on Live Support. With Michele, who's really short. We'll have a ball. With June, who's really tall. They have fun, interviewing comedians on Live Support. With Michele, who's really short. Now it's time to start Live Support.
The Live Support Podcast is brought to you by the Hot Breath Comedy Network.
Wow, give yourself a round of applause. Welcome to the award-winning Live Support Podcast. I'm your host, June Colson, here with Michele with one L, Trisha's sister, Rhonda Colson, Corey's friend, and a woman who has way too many children's toys for having no children in her home, Michele Ventriloquist. What are you doing? What have you got there?
Well, I was just trying to get prepped up for our guest today. So I pulled out everything I could think of that, I could move like it's a mouth kind of a thing.
Oh, okay.
But this one doesn't have a mouth. He just has a really long nose and he shakes.
So, Michele, it's a podcast, so I'm going to go ahead and describe everything that you were just holding.
This is Pinocchio.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah. The first opening scene was I'm a clam. That was the worst. And I don't know if a clam even says that.
That was a pretty good clam.
Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good clam voice.
Maybe it'd be more like this. That didn't work either.
Okay.
I can't do
that.
That
That didn't work at all.
I tried. It's really bad. Anyway, I'm really excited about today and our guests that we're going to be interviewing. So I got all my stuff out ready to go.
It seems like you are excited. I think part of the comedy, though, is that they have to actually understand what you're saying. So the gargling water while you do the...
I don't know how to do that. I was like,
I don't know. We may have to add captions for those who watch the podcast later. You know what? I just realized our last podcast, we didn't tell people where they could listen or watch.
You didn't.
But why do we do that? Because if they're listening, they're listening. You know what I'm saying?
But if
they found us somehow.
I wonder what that looks like. Well, then they might want to know. So that's why it's important that you can tell them that they could watch us on YouTube or the Creative Motion Network on Roku TV, or if they're already listening to us on like Amazon, Apple or Audible or Spotify, like they could find other places to listen to us if they wanted to.
That's true. I really want them to see the opening sequence though, because we've been playing that all season. We're into 30-something episodes at this point this season. Mm-hmm. And I just realized that almost every picture that you have of me is crazy eyes. Like you look adorable in every picture, but if it's a picture of us together, I'm like, thank you. What is that?
I mean, you are very photogenic. I mean, your eyes are kind of crazy all the time.
It's the triple chin, crazy-eyed, excited face. There it is.
So if you are listening and you want to see this picture, I just posted of June. She's on the Huckabee Show. She looks like a train is coming at her. And she's like, ah! That's what it looks like. But I know that your heart behind it is, we're so excited to be here. Right?
Yeah.
That's
oh my gosh.
Right now.
You know how you pick apart everything that you do? The video of that, when I walk out, I'm like, well, hello, super excited. But the tone of my voice is so weird and creepy. Like it was. And then it was that face. So I don't know if they never ask me back. then I get it. I totally get it. I get it. But so we interviewed Wynette Turner not long ago.
Yes,
it was a great episode. Brought us to the fourth, we were number 4 on the Creative Motion Network that week. And a lot of people listening to her. We've had some great guests this season. Just recently, Cleto Rodriguez.
Oh, and we also had that Bob Smiley guy.
Bob Smiley's been on here. Mm-hmm. Joey ILO, which was fantastic.
So good. Yep.
So friends, we're glad that you're with us on this episode. Make sure you go back and you check out some of the previous episodes. So speaking of that crazy face, that's where I was on stage at the Huckabee Show. Mm-hmm. And we have a guest today who has stepped on that stage as well. Now, I did the crowd warm up, but this guest, they were on the TV broadcast. So they like to keep me behind the scenes. You know what I mean? That's just, it's
so
like
he was at the couch, like a Johnny Carson moment.
Listen, you're going to have to ask him. So let's tell our audience who is on our show today, Michele.
Okay. Our guest never travels alone. He's always bringing his Aunt Tilly and a few other characters along. They say he is the chatty one, but you never see his mouth moving. He is an expert ventriloquist and an in-demand comedian. He's performed for Fortune 500 companies. He's the go-to performer for the likes of David Jeremiah and the Chuck Swindoll. He was the president of the CCA. He was a regular on the Darren Strebel comedy show. He was on a hit TV show, Bananas Comedy, The Best of Bananas, Comedy Bunch 3, The Huckabee Show. He's been in prison more times than me. Let's welcome to the Laugh Support Podcast a man who can make anything talk, David Pendleton. Woo-woo!
All right.
I thought that was going to make you smile.
That's a great. I actually like that credit probably more than any of the other credits, that I've been in prison more than Michelle Van Dusen.
That's pretty heavy business right there. So the first thing we want to start with, David, is what's your favorite Bible verse? I'm kidding. Really. We told David that, that's we might ask random questions about that, but I think that would be too easy for someone like you.
That's why I laughed at that so immediately, because it's a callback to an earlier joke that the audience is not even aware of.
Totally not even aware of, because this is what we do. This is what we do laugh support for. Just me and Michele, it's just kind of for us sometimes. And then other people come along. No, what I want to know, not really, because I think the Bible verse would be too easy for you. What's your favorite lyric to a death metal song?
Oh my goodness. I'm not at all familiar with.
I thought there'd be so many, David. Okay, so it's
that's it. That's my favorite one.
That's the whole thing.
No idea.
So we will, now that I mentioned death metal, if you do have a Bible verse you want to throw out there to clean this whole thing up.
Romans 1:16, I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it's the power of God unto salvation to those who believe, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. That's what Paul wrote in the book of Romans 1:16.
Wow. That's a long one too. That's showing off a little, I think. Okay.
Have you been to Greece? Because they have the best cabbage in the world.
Really?
Athens, Greece. Yeah. The cabbage is bigger than your head. It's huge. Not saying that your head's small. The cabbage is huge, and you don't have to cook it or anything. It's just, you got to wash it, but it's so sweet.
Just eat it raw, right out of the garden.
Wow. Yeah. I wonder if they have that on like their travel channel or something like that. That's why people go there. It's just for the cabbage. You think? No, that's not it at all. Well, David, welcome to the Laugh Support Podcast. We told you that, we gave you a little overview of our podcast. Basically, Michele and I have been the support for each other for several years now. And as we started this podcast, we reached out to other comedians and asked the question, along this journey in comedy and ventriloquism. Look at me saying that word. I did it. Didn't have to spell it. Michele did.
There it is.
I put it on the side.
Yeah, if you want to know the spelling, it is Ventriloquist. See, anything over 4 letters, you've lost me. Ventriloquist. But David, so on your journey, because I've seen you, you're fantastic, you're brilliant. Comedy is just a gift that you have been given, and you now give that to other people. And so on your comedic journey, tell us a little bit about, maybe if you think back to the beginning, if there's someone who stands out to you that might have been there for you right from the start as you did this.
Okay. I started learning ventriloquism when I was 6 years old. My grandmother, my paternal grandmother, so Grandma Pendleton, gave me a little Charlie McCarthy doll puppet with the string in the back of the neck, and you pull the string
like this.
No, not like that. Not at all like that.
Frightening, Michele. Again, it's a podcast for our listeners. Michele is once again, she's drug out the crazy dead baby doll that her and her sister her and her sister have like mailed this thing back and forth to each other, and it scares all of us. Michele, you will be putting time out if you bring that out one more time.
I just figured he was talking about, way back when, when he started at 6. I thought it might be something this old. That's why I brought it. That's all. Okay.
Well,
carry on, David.
It probably is that old, but it looked a little different than that. It was a little Charlie McCarthy puppet, which has the slot jaw mouth, and Edgar Bergen was a famous ventriloquist back in the 50s, actually earlier than that, the 30s and 40s. But he had Charlie McCarthy, who's the little character with the monocle and the top hat. Anyway, so I started with one of those toy puppets with the string in the back of the neck. And I also had a record album called Instant Ventriloquism by Jimmy Nelson. And that spawned the next generation of ventriloquists. Most of the ventriloquists that are kind of from my era, we all learned off that same record album. So my grandmother, though, was very influential in helping me as a young lad start to develop material, jokes. We, went to the library and got joke books and started to learn how to put together routines and that sort of thing. So my grandmother was very helpful in that whole process. And then as I got older, I had a very good friend in high school. His name was Scott Kirby, and he played the piano and was an incredible ragtime piano player. As a matter of fact, is considered today one of the premier ragtime piano players. You could look up Scott Kirby ragtime piano and read all about him. He's an amazing talent. But he also lived in my little hometown of Urbana, Ohio. And so he and I teamed up for a while, and he'd play the piano and I'd do my little ventriloquist act. And I probably had a solid, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes of material. And he would play the piano. And actually, we had to come up with, okay, what can we do together? He played ragtime. And so that's when I first came up with the concept, and I still do it to this day in my act, which for some people, that's kind of sweet. For other people, that's absolutely pathetic. That I'm still doing something in my act that I started doing when I was in high school, at my age. But we did the song Ragmop, Raggmopp, Ragmop. And so Scott played the piano, and I, it's a little piece with ventriloquism where the character spells out Ragmop, and you go back and forth between the two. So that was my early career in show business. And we would do shows for the local civic organizations, the Rotary Club, the Kiwanis Club, the lodge down the hall, or down the street rather, the local lodge meetings, and of course, birthday parties and various civic functions. And that's how I got started. So unlike a lot of comedians, who come up, kind of working their craft on a comedy club stage, you even have to be kind of a certain age really to do that. I wouldn't recommend it if you're very young.
6 years old.
So that's how I kind of started to develop my chops as a performer.
Wow. So cool. Did you know at the time anybody doing, because you mentioned your friend Scott, who was a musician. Did you know anyone else who was doing ventriloquism that like you were able to interact with at the very beginning?
Yeah. So then enter the ventriloquist convention. So I started attending the International Ventriloquist Convention, which was in Cincinnati, Ohio, not very far from where I lived. So I convinced my mother to drive me there and stay for the convention. And so she was so sweet to be willing to do this for her, for her son. So I started going to the convention when I was 13 years old. And I met another young man there who really was already at that time getting a lot of attention for his talent as a ventriloquist, who was 15 years old at the time, a guy by the name of Jeff Dunham.
Never heard of him. Never heard of him. Wow.
I have.
So in other words, this was a place where young ventriloquists and young and old gathered. And it was when I started going, I believe that was like ventriloquist convention number, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5. So that was still a young thing that was happening there with this convention, or something that had just started up in the past few years. And so I met older ventriloquists or people that were maybe just a little bit ahead of me in terms of their career. There was a guy there named Dale Brown that I will never forget. Totally took me under his wing, just shared with me what he was doing. He was deciding at that time that he was going to start doing this full time. He worked for some other company, but was making the decision that I'm going to pull the trigger and I'm going to start doing this full time, which I couldn't even conceptualize that because I was 13 years old. Like, what does that mean? But was kind of processing that with me even as a young lad. And he and his wife were just so kind to kind of take me under their wing. So that was one of those things too that I look back on and I've reflected on over time as I've gotten older. And I've just thought, yeah, that really encouraged me, which is what the show is all about, providing support. And I was fortunate enough to find those people who came up beside me, kind of put their arm around me and encouraged me along the way. So Dale Brown was one of them. Mark Wade was another guy who did kid shows in schools, also lived in Ohio. My grandfather, so my maternal grandfather, became a huge cheerleader for me. He lived in Cincinnati and had a business in Cincinnati called Swallen's Department Store. He had a whole chain of department stores in Cincinnati called Swallen's. He was kind of the Sam Walton and Truett Cathy of Cincinnati. Wow. Sam Walton in that he was a retailer and had a retail chain of stores. Truett Cathy in that he had very strong Christian convictions and decided that even as a retailer that he would not open on Sunday. And so many people in Cincinnati had the similar story that we all have about, hey, I'm kind of feeling like, let's go to Chick-fil-A. And you pull in and you go, oh, it's Sunday.
Closed on Sunday, yes.
Closed. And so that was my grandfather. People have all kinds of stories about, yeah, I was going to go get whatever at Swallen's. And then I remembered it was Sunday. But anyway, that's an aside. My grandfather was a fairly prominent businessman, but also a huge cheerleader for me. And it was really him that as I started to deepen in my walk with God, in my religious convictions, he was the one that said, I think that God is calling you to use your talent as a ventriloquist to make an impact for the church, make an impact for his kingdom. And so really it was my grandfather that started to plant those seeds in my life early on. And so that was around when he started to really encourage me. Well, I actually have a letter that he sent me where he included a newspaper article that some pastor was doing ventriloquism. And as a part of, he would use that as an illustration or as a way to add a little interest to his sermon. And so somebody had written a newspaper article about this pastor who did that. So my grandfather sent me that article and was just planting seeds about see how you can use this to have an impact for God's kingdom. And at the time, I didn't really put any of those pieces together. But to this day, I still have that letter that he sent me. I don't remember the date of it. I just remember that I was recently going through some stuff and I found that. And I thought, oh yeah, my grandfather sent me that. I was just a young teenager at that time. So,
wow.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty cool. So we're thinking that was a Thursday. It was a stormy day. And the mailman had to slush through the rain and it brought you joy reading the letter at 5:57 p.m. that evening, right? Wow, that's amazing. That's fantastic. What a story.
Are you mocking me? What are you doing, Michele?
No, I was adding more detail to, you know, you
I
don't
see.
remember the date. You remember the date. It was a
Well, I
Thursday
can't
stormy
remember. I know,
night.
because I'm just trying to remember about how old I was, but it was probably around that same era. I was 14, 15 years old.
It's okay if you don't remember details. Michele
You
will just make
just
things
finished
up.
We'll
having a
fill them in.
meatloaf
I
dinner,
obviously she
and it was
will.
delicious. You know, your
Yes,
mom's like,
she will
"Hey,
just spill
son,
things.
this came for you from your grandfather. Read it
We
with care."
you you know, I think about,
That's
like, you know,
amazing.
your grandfather, my grandfather, you know, they didn't come from the easiest generation.
Right.
And a lot of
Yeah.
those folks were very serious people.
Yeah.
And to have someone from that generation take something that someone could trivialize
Yeah.
Yeah.
and in a young boy's life, you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
and actually see it for what it was and what God intended it to be. That's huge. I
You
can't
know what? That's
imagine.
really true. That's really true.
Yeah, what
Now,
a
my
blessing.
grandfather was the kind of person that, well, he was just a cheerleader in general. He was one of the
Mm,
most incredible, positive people I've ever known in my whole life.
mm.
But you're right, though, that that certainly did characterize a lot of people sort of from that generation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I tell you, I for sure definitely know that your grandfather was on to something, because I've been able to see God use you
Hmm.
through your skill set and through your love for him and your love for other people, because just, you know, just recently, for our listeners, the Christian Comedy Association is where I got to find people the way David found people at the, you know,
The
the other
ventriloquist
ventriloquists.
convention.
Yes.
Yes.
Um, and that's something that, like, COVID attacked a lot of people and a lot of groups and things like that. You know, the Christian Comedy Association, we weren't able to have our retreats or convention and things that we had gotten used to. But David, you're somebody who basically rallied the troops and kept it going. And this year I got to witness newcomers, new people who are experiencing what you experienced at
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
convention, what I experienced at the CCA. And normally we ask our guests, like, have you, you know, helped somebody along the way? And there may be people that you're specifically mentoring, but I'm not going to ask you that question because I know the answer to it. Like, Michele and I got to, like, witness it.
I've been
Right.
working really hard at this, and I'm not
Michele is
doing very
working.
well.
But really, because your grandfather, it's amazing what
Yeah, it is
a
amazing.
ripple effect it is,
Yeah.
and
The
how you don't
generation
know.
blessing.
Yeah, the generation's blessing. Your grandfather, you said he planted a seed, and I
Yes.
say he dropped that little stone in the pond and said,
Yeah.
"Go," and you did. And
Yeah.
who knew, you know, that years later it would ripple into you being someone who was helping people. That event wouldn't have happened had you not, you know, led the charge on it, right? And I got to see people for the first time step in there
Yeah.
and have, you know, some of that ripple effect hit them, and I can't wait to see where that goes from there. So I say that because I know that much about how much of it influenced other people.
Well,
But I will.
association is so important,
Yes.
and I think it's something that people kind of see as maybe just gravy. You know what I'm saying? Just kind of
Mhm.
the cherry on top. But association, I think, is what it's all about.
Mhm.
Call it what you will. You know, association, fellowship.
Yes.
You know, as believers, we call it fellowship. In other words, connection. So can
Mhm.
I share something with you? I've shared this
Mhm.
with quite a few people, but there was an event in my life that changed my life in so many profound ways. And I was meeting with a counselor because I was just going through a season in my life where there'd been a lot of transitions. I'd graduated from college. I was in a new place, and I was finding myself just feeling a little bit depressed. And I wanted to
Mm.
meet with somebody and just talk through that. And so I thought, you know what, if I pay somebody, then I can lay my cards out on the table and I
Mhm.
won't have to
Yes.
feel self-conscious about that. This person asked me two questions that changed my life. Now, maybe I've told you this before, but I've told a lot of people this. So here are the two questions. Question number one, he said, David, who are you intimate with? Meaning intimate, of course, in the purest sense.
Yes.
Who are you connecting with? Who do you feel like you can be vulnerable with? Who are you friends with? Friends in a deep way. And then the second question was, do you know how to ask for intimacy? Now that one really stumped me, and I thought about it for a very long time. I remember just sitting there kind of in stunned silence for quite a while, what felt like, quite a few moments. And I looked at him and I said, no. And then I said, do you?
That's a great question.
How do you do that? Because how do you ask for intimacy? That sounds so needy and pathetic.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like,
yes.
How do you do that in such a way that you will accomplish actually what you need, which, and this is what he talked about is, David, what we're describing here is what we all need. This is not just something that is bonus. This is something that we need, like food and water. This is the way we're designed. We're relational beings, and we need this. And at the time, I'd never really thought about that. Like I was just I was in my early 20s, and I'd never really thought very deeply about that. And so it really affected me. And basically, this counselor said, here's the thing, David, I think you do know how to do this. But I think that what you need to do is be intentional about it. And what I discovered was that made all the difference. Like whatever I paid him for that counseling session was worth absolutely every penny and more.
Yes.
Because it made all the difference for me. And then I just have become passionate about that. The importance of connecting with people, the importance of vulnerability, and making friends with people, not in a way where it's desperate, but in a way where you can be vulnerable, but you don't want to be a bore. People who are boring just talk about themselves all the time. You know what I mean? You just, if you think about it, who are the people that I consider to be boring? It's people that talk about themselves all the time. But in order to not be that, what you need to learn to do is just ask really good questions and engage and listen well. And I'm not perfect at it by any means, but that's been my journey. And some of this is like so basic, right? Like I'm saying something, there's nothing really profound about what I'm saying here, but I think so often we miss it. And I think it's cool that that's what this podcast is all about. That's what, that's the general topic of what it is that you guys are doing here, is talking about support and specifically relational support. So anyway, now I'm going to start getting boring.
No. When you said it sounded like a simplistic concept, to me, it is a complicated concept, because that's not the kind of world that we live in. We live in a world that says, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You got this. Independent. I got this on my own. I worked hard. Me. And so when we do become vulnerable, when we do reach out to other people, you've got two opportunities. You've got an opportunity to connect and have a deep and intimate relationship with a friend, or you have an opportunity to be rejected. Yeah. And the fear of rejection, I think, is that was a big reason for me to not have friends for a long time, because I did grow up low income housing, government housing, alcoholic, family, poverty, all of those things. Yeah. I've been rejected for so long and had to kind of hold myself up and carry myself. I tell, Michele and Rhonda Corey, literally in my 40s is when I became the most vulnerable in friendships. And it was with them, because God put some people in my path that I finally could be vulnerable with. And it also helps when you realize that there are people that are going through or dealing with the same things that you're dealing with. They understand, and I think that's why, like in ventriloquism, there's a conversation you're going to have with your friends who do that.
Yeah.
I'm completely lost on the conversation.
Yeah.
But how exciting it gets when you're with other comedians or other ventriloquists, and you don't have to back up, explain anything. You can just be like, oh, it's one of those shows, and they get it. Yeah. And you just feel like you've been seen, like they're with you. So you definitely have that gift of connecting people. And it's not easy when you do these events and you bring all these people together, because not everybody's always going to be happy. Not everybody's always going to be pleased. But I think when you put your heart in the right place and you work hard and let God lead, then all of those things, we can't control, humans' reactions, but we can do what he calls us to do, right?
Yeah. By the way, I want to shout out really quickly too. One of the young men that I met, and I met him when he was just, I want to say 17, maybe 18 years old. Ryan Baumgardner, a ventriloquist. I met him at the Ventriloquist convention. And also just a wonderful Christian guy. And now he wasn't married at the time, now married to Gail, his wife. And he's a guy that I think you guys would enjoy having on your show. Solid, walks with the Lord and has a great ventriloquist act. But like I said, one of those guys that I just met at the Ventriloquist convention and have now become, close friends. Another guy named Dan Satchoff that I've met at the Ventriloquist convention. He's not a full-time working ventriloquist, but he's an actor out in Hollywood and has amazing talent. I just recently saw him, didn't know that he was going to be on the show, but or the movie rather. He was on Being the Ricardos. Nicole Kidman played Lucille Ball.
Right.
And so we're not talking, he wasn't an extra, like he had a role in this movie.
Wow.
And just a solid, great guy. But again, somebody that I met at the Ventriloquist convention of all places. And I only mention that just to say, here's a guy that's out there in show business, but we sort of found each other at the Ventriloquist convention and also had a mutual recognition that what is so important in life is not just kind of having surface friendships or relationships with people, but your relationships need to go deep. And so that was what was cool about that. I also just recently, and you definitely have to have him on your show, have gotten to know a guy by the name of Tommy Morin. June, do you know Tommy?
I don't know who Tommy is. I'm writing it down though.
Yeah, Rhonda is good friends with Tommy. So Rhonda can connect you. I can as well. But he's a great guy. Just makes me laugh all the time. And I think that you would also enjoy just his antics on his show. Or on your show rather.
Fantastic. Yes. Well, you see, Michelle, exactly what we're talking about here, though. Like we're here to talk about David, and David is doing what? What's he doing, Michelle?
He's supporting others. Oh, you got to have this one. You got to do this one. And I met this guy, and it's all about somebody else, which is amazing. And that's what's so fantastic about you, David, is not only are you real and genuine, but you're real and genuine in your love and concern for other people. Now, with that, I do have to
say it's almost a little embarrassing because it's not like I really genuinely, well, you know this, I really genuinely want these people for you guys to meet these people.
Yes.
Yeah, and I want to meet them now. Definitely. But because you've given them such a high recommendation. Now, do you have you met Lucille?
Lauren Lucille, no.
Yeah, because she's also a ventriloquist. I'm going to be doing a show with her when this comes out, it'll be a month ago.
Yes, I have met Lauren.
Yes, she came to the CCA retreat this year, and she was probably hard to get close to because all of us love her so much that every extra breath that Lauren has in her lungs, all the ladies are like, Lauren. Okay, we love you, Lauren.
I did notice that, and now that you say that, and I'm getting older. It's harder for me to just remember names and association, that sort of thing. Now that you say all of that, I totally met her. We had a delightful conversation. And she's really sweet. I don't feel like I got to know her very well, but I think you're right. It's because she was constantly
bombarded by everyone else, right?
by all the other ladies at the CCA retreat. So
she's uber talented, and she does ventriloquism also, and she does she sings. Now, have you ever had any of your characters sing?
Yeah.
And I also want to know, how did you come up with the different characters that you use on stage?
Well, how did I come up with them? I don't remember.
Well, this is a few of the names, right? You have Aunt Tilly, Vern,
Aunt Tilly,
Buford
the dog, and Mac.
Mac.
Yeah, Mac Elroy. And his name is Mac Elroy because he was made by the Mac Elroy brothers. Actually, he was built in 1938. I'm currently the only ventriloquist living that regularly performs with what would be considered in the ventriloquist world an original Mac Elroy figure.
Wow.
That they're highly sought after because they're rare. There's only about 30 known of these characters out there. Most of them in private collections. David Copperfield owns, I think, 3. So in other words, they're these collectible puppets, a little bit like a Stradivarius violin. You know what I'm saying? Like just. But I'm the only one that regularly performs with an original Mac Elroy. People in the ventriloquist community think that I'm a bit crazy to do that because they're very valuable. But
okay.
But the thing is, as a believer, we know that life is but a vapor, and you know what? This was designed to be performed with, not like Toy Story, not to put the toy behind glass in some sort of a collection. Which Toy Story was that? It's like Toy Story 3, I think. Anyway, you get the concept. But they're to be played with, they're to be enjoyed, they're to be on stage. That's why they were built. That's their purpose. That's their design. So that's the reason that I so enjoy performing with this vintage 1938 ventriloquist puppet. I tell the story about how I acquired him. I have a video out there.
If they go to your website, it's down on there.
Yeah. So David's website is anythingcantalk.com. So anything he refers to on the website, you can go to anythingcantalk.com. All right, tell us about the video.
We also want to do a shout out for ChristianComedyAssociation.org.
Yes.
And we would love for you to come to our retreat. It's going to be in Indianapolis in June. And we would love to have you. We would love to meet you.
Yes.
And have you join our quirky little community of Christian comedians and other performers.
Now, is that a .org? Say the website again for that one.
Christian Comedy Association, all spelled out. ChristianComedyAssociation.org. We used to have a .com, but we don't really use that anymore. It's now .org.
Yes.
And the registration page for next year's retreat will be up soon. Having this conversation just reminds me that I need to get that finished to put that up. But we've got some time. But it's next June.
Next June. Yeah.
So a lot of people that we've been interviewing lately, just talking about the connections that it makes. We had 35 episodes the first season, and I think we're around 35 at this point, maybe doing 40 this season. I would say at least 40% of our guests bring up the Christian Comedy Association. And, we just interviewed Cleto Rodriguez last episode.
And we have not seen Cleto at a retreat in quite some time.
Yes. And he was sharing about his journey of being, not clean comedian, and then God changing the direction of his life, and how the connections he made through the Christian Comedy Association, that there are still people that are, Bob Smiley claimed to be a brother. And he treated him like a brother. He dogged him, he made fun of him. We insulted him and teased him. But yeah, a lot of people through this retreat that you're talking about, the Christian Comedy Association retreat, there's a lot of comedians that we have interviewed that have said that, that made the biggest difference for them to be able to connect with other people. And they're really excited that it continues on. So as David shared, it's ChristianComedyAssociation.org this June in Indianapolis, 2023. I believe it's June 6, 7, 8.
I think that's right.
Is that right?
Either way, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever would be correspondent with that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't have a calendar in front of me. You'd think I would know, good grief, that I would remember, but they just... Yeah.
Well, look at it. I have my calendar here. And
you do. There it is.
Just so you guys know, once again, this year, it's going to be on my birthday. It's going to be on my birthday. And I may have acted like a big baby when they gave me a cake and cried. So this year I'm going to ask that there's no cake. No cake. So
I'm going to ask for a cake, please. Somebody bring a cake because it was delicious. Okay. All right. We got that settled.
Well, it looks like 20 2023, it is June 5th, 6th, and 7th. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, June 2023 is June 5th, 6th, and 7th. So we'll be closing it out on my birthday this year.
Yeah.
So, in case anybody wanted to go ahead and get started on a gift for that.
just in case somebody wanted to. So you had a video up, David. It was a while ago, and I have not seen it. I've looked for it and I've looked for it.
Oh,
and
no. I'm terrible at this.
It was it was, I believe, Focus on the Family, and it was Aunt Tilly talking about sex, right?
Oh.
Michelle, this is a clean podcast.
Okay, let me tell the story.
Well, describe Aunt Tilly first, because
Aunt
for people who haven't seen you, Aunt Tilly looks like what?
Aunt Tilly is 94 years old. Okay, so the story is Josh McDowell. So it wasn't Focus on the Family; it was Josh McDowell.
Oh,
Josh McDowell. Okay. Spoke a lot on college campuses over the years about the importance of abstinence and why it would be important to wait until marriage and so on. So he did a talk, and he asked me to introduce him at one of these events. And he said, I want to be fun and clever. And this was several years ago when Auto-Tune the News. Remember Auto-Tune the News? You don't see that very much anymore. Are you?
That was the best. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, the guys that did Auto-Tune, where they would take little news stories and then turn it into a song. And they literally would auto-tune the person speaking, so it sounded like they were singing.
Got it.
And so there was the Backing Up song. I'm backing up. But anyway, there's some really great Auto-Tune the News songs that were just so catchy. So I thought it would be really fun to do Auto-Tune Josh McDowell. And I took a portion of one of his talks where he was talking about he was talking about sex. I mean, basically,
Yes.
And that was the topic of the thing that I was introducing him for. So this was not off topic. This was exactly what
this wasn't a random moment David had.
Exactly the conference. This was the event. And I knew some of the content that he was going to give. And Josh he's got very distinct ways of making a point. And he, in the video that I pulled this from, he also did in his presentation where he says, what is the most powerful sex organ? The most powerful sex organ, he says, it's not between your legs, it's between your ears. It's your mind. And so, very provocative kinds of statements that he would make, edgy, provocative things as he's talking on this topic. Mm-hmm. So I took some of those phrases. It's not between your legs, it's between your ears.
Yes.
And I worked with a friend of mine who was very talented as a musician, and we made that into a song.
Oh, nice.
And it was fantastic.
And then we integrated it as if Aunt Tilly was asking Josh these questions. You know how you have the reverse angle as if the person is actually asking the question, and then you have the actual video of the person responding.
Yes.
And of course they were never even in the room together, but you make it look like they were. And so Aunt Tilly was asking Josh these questions, and then she kind of launches him into singing this song. So it was this really silly, kind of very off the wall video. I did not host. In other words, I didn't have that video on my YouTube page. It was on somebody else's YouTube page. And that is now taken down. Like you won't be able to find that anymore. And I need to contact the guy to put it back up, but I've just kind of let it go. Because I mean, it was edgy and it had a place. Like
we weren't fantastic.
We weren't necessarily intending for that to live on YouTube forever. It was intended for this conference. It had a very specific purpose.
Yeah, but it's so good. It is so good, and it's still needed for this generation and the next generation and the next generation, because they would be a video I would make my kids watch. My boys need to see that video. And the best part of the video, David's kids are in it.
Yes, they
like
are.
their boys are part of, so you have like, like they're interviewing the guy, and so you see the teenagers are sitting there listening, and then Aunt Tilly who starts to sing, and you just see the head nods of the kids and the thought complex, like, wait, where? What it's between our ears? What?
Yes,
like you see all of it. It's so, and to hear this, what is she, 94?
Yeah, 94. Yeah, singing along.
So good. It's so
campy. Good. It's campy. It's bizarre. There was just enough about it that I think
it's brilliant.
I kind of thought it might actually kind of go viral, like, because it was just kind of weird. But anyway, thank you for appreciating it.
Oh my God. And I looked for it because I wanted to play it so bad. But it's gone. Please find it. Please.
There was one of the lines is they never have created a condom for the mind.
Yeah.
Well, see, even there, that's a provocative statement, right? They haven't created a condom for the mind, but you get the point. In other words,
and then, but then you'll get like Joby Sad or Joey Aiello. Oh yeah, and take a balloon.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're gonna
see those guys. They blow it up.
Well, you know what's interesting is that it actually led to some really good conversations that I had with my sons.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. Is that a lot of times I think people we get a little frustrated with the Christian culture.
Right.
Avoiding topics. And I think I had a friend, actually my nephew, he was the first grandbaby and, nephew in the family. And someone was talking to him about sex on the school bus, and he came home and had some, conversations, and my mom and sister we all were kind of there together. And my sister's like, can you believe this kid said this, and this? And mom said, well, what did you say? And my sister said, I just told him that's not a conversation that we're having. You're only 10 years old. And my mom said, if someone is talking to him about it, it's time for you to be talking to him about it. And the thing about comedy is that it can take that scary edge off. It can diffuse the situation, and it gives us permission to talk about things we need to be talking about anyway.
That's right.
And to even act like, oh, it's edgy for us to even be talking about this. No, it's what we should be talking about. And like you said, it opens that door to conversation, and it makes it less, like I promise you, any conversations I've had with my boys had an edge of comedy around it, just to use the situation and allow them to be like, oh, okay, we can kind of laugh about this, but I'm serious though. We're serious. So, but comedy can do that. It can give us permission to talk about things. And I think a lot of comedians are able to use their platform for that. So that's
and comedy, one of the principles in comedy is tension and release.
Yes.
And so there needs to be some tension that actually is built, and then there's the release that that's the laughter part. So
yes.
That's how that works.
Michelle, you and I are going to learn comedy by the end of this. By the time we get done interviewing people, maybe season 4 or 5, we'll have at least a joke or two figured out.
Nice. If we don't get canceled by then. No.
Okay,
so
I want to shout out to one other friend, by the way, Jim Labriola. And Jim and Tommy remind me so much of each other. As it turns out, they came from, they're both from New York. They both are Italian. They kind of have a similar way that they talk. As a matter of fact, it was really funny when I first met Tommy. I could not stop thinking about Jimmy because of how similar they are and how much they just love to, both of them love to just bust my chops about my personality and, my quirkiness. But Jim Labriola is also another one of those friends that has been an incredible support and encouragement to me. He's the kind of guy that I can call any day at any time, and he will always be there for me with an encouraging word and, somebody that you can go deep with, or that I can go, that I've found that I can go deep with. So he's another guy that I would love to connect him to you guys to potentially have on the show. So.
Well, let's talk about your lovely bride. I want to say, as far as laugh support goes, there's been more than once that I've been in Indiana, and David and Lynda have been in an audience and watched me do whatever it is I'm doing, and I remember the first time that they
always
came.
do very well.
Well, I appreciate that. David is definitely, you've been at this game a whole lot longer than me, and I have a lot of respect for you. And so when you have someone that you truly respect in the audience, you hope like, don't mess this up, don't screw this up. David and Lynda are here, but you guys have never made me feel like you were watching me to judge me, or that that you were deciding whether I was good or not good. Like literally every time you and Lynda have been present at something that I was doing, I always just felt supported, and that was it. Like nothing outside of that. Not that you were trying to decide if I had the gift or if I was worthy or whatever. Because I mean, you get that. Christian environments or non-Christian environments. You have some veterans who will kind of set back, and you can tell whether they're going to try to give you a blessing or if they're going to go, that girl's hacked, that girl, whatever. And I've never felt that with you. And I know Lynda she's been a huge part of
that's true.
Your career. So tell us a little bit about how that partnership has worked out. Because we definitely don't want to close out without talking about.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up, because of course I was kind of, I'm a typical dude, right? I'm going down this certain line, thinking about friends and people in the industry and, guys that I've gotten to know over the years, that sort of thing. My wife, oh my goodness, there is no bigger supporter in my life. And she is absolutely the love of my life. My wife, Lynda, she is amazing.
And gorgeous.
And gorgeous. I will agree that, as everybody always says, but it's really true for me.
It is true.
I married up. And she's an amazing mother. Early on when we got married, as we were dating, I actually brought her along on some gigs that I was doing. And in some ways, I just wanted to see, how's she going to deal with this? If we're going to date, this is who I am, and this is what I do. I wonder how she will deal with kind of being in this kind of environment. And she just jumped right in, and then immediately started to figure out ways to support and make it better, and would notice things that where somebody needed to pick up the slack somewhere. Somebody needs to be back at the sound board handling that better than they are. And so she took it upon herself to go back and learn the soundboard so she can be there and know how to be that support in that role.
Wow.
She's the one that does all the music cues for my act. I do have some musical elements in the act. And then we started adding even more because I had somebody now that could come along with me and do that. She even recently has learned how to remotely control a puppet. I now have a remote control puppet that I use in my show. And she's learned how to puppeteer that.
It's named David. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
So, anyway, I'm likening that to my career, but so much more than that. I mean, she just is an amazing mother. She's also been somebody that, people will call and they'll say, we'd like to have David come do a show. We don't have much of a budget. Would he be willing to come and do it for free? And Lynda will often point out to them very gently, there is no such thing as a free show. She said, now David might be able to come and do a show for you, but understand, if you don't pay for it, someone will. And that someone might be his sons that will miss his dad being home that night. And so somebody will pay for it.
Yeah.
And so she's just always had that perspective and is able to share that, not in any kind of a snarky way, but just to help clients understand that somebody's going to pay for this. Yeah. And if it's not being paid for by the client, by you, having David come and do a show for you, then I'm going to pay, so we might still be willing to do that, but just recognize that somebody's going to pay for that. So anyway, it was Lynda that was, she she's perceptive enough to recognize that and even to communicate it.
Yeah.
And,
she's really good at that.
So again, I brought it back to career stuff, but my point there is that she's incredibly insightful, and she's also really good at helping me with, that joke that you do the other night, you did it and you did it this way, and it was so much funnier. Did you notice the difference? And I, of course, it blew right past me. I didn't notice, but she will point out, yeah, when you did it this way, it actually gets a little better laugh. And then I started doing it that way. She was absolutely right. Like, I hadn't noticed that before. So she's just very perceptive, and she's really good at helping along the way. So
that's fantastic to have a spouse that has that much insight and ability and notices all the little things that are lacking. So then she just steps into this area, to make you better, because you're the one that's on the stage. I love that so much. I mean, she's the epitome of support. I mean, that's the way
that is really true.
And she's always been so kind, and like anytime we've ever had conversations, she's like, well, you are getting this amount of money, right? I was like,
oh yeah.
No. She's like, oh, that should be your minimum. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I had no idea. I'm like, oh, okay. She's like, you're worth more. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, so she just gives you that whole backing, and she's smart and brilliant and beautiful. So David, man, the combination of having a husband and a wife to be able to do this together is fantastic. I mean, that is a huge support. There's only a couple other couples that are like you guys, like the Renfros. Right?
Yes.
Anita Renfro and John.
And John,
But it's reversed, though, because John's the one that supports everything that Anita does on stage.
Anita,
Yeah, so he's always the one doing the cues and things like that, which is really cool. But then now, I think with Lynda doing the remote control part, which I'm really fascinated at this now. Now I want to go to her show. When is your next show? Because I want to come watch how this happens. Because so is she like on stage? She backstage?
No, she's totally down either at the soundboard or in the audience.
It's like a drone coming in. Oh,
well, it's a puppet, but she controls all the head movement. So I have just a tiny little thing that I hold in the palm of my hand that controls the mouth, because that's where you need the precision of an accuracy so that the mouth corresponds with what's being said. So that's very important, and somebody can't follow that. But in terms of head movement and looking around and blinking and all of that, Lynda can do that and sort of follow along, and the movements can kind of follow after. Cool. You see what I'm saying? So I simply don't have the ability to control all of that in the palm of my hand. That technology doesn't quite exist, at least not to get that sort of precision. So that's what she's controlling in back. But bless her heart that she's willing to pick up this little. And I totally had this. I designed all of this, and so it's literally a model airplane remote control, like a drone controller that she's back there doing.
Okay, wow. Wait, hold up. So you designed this. So is this a design that you are the only one in the world that has it? Or is this something that other people have it, but then you created like a model for you? I'm
probably the only one in the world that does it just like that. But there have been other people who have designed or done, their own rendition of an animatronic or remote control puppet. Like I'm certain that's not unique to me. There are other.
Okay. Because I was like, you need to market that. You need to be making money on that.
Michelle's always trying to come up with an idea or a book or something for every one of our guests to do. So she was ready to patent that.
Yeah, to make that up. No, it's just my own. It's my own rendition of it. There's various ways to do it, I'm sure.
So I think you're wait, hang on, June. Excuse me for just a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, I have my mind is exploding with questions here. So is that a whole nother character in your show?
It is. Yeah, his name is Sergeant Major Boorah, and he comes out on stage, and he's learned that there's some troublemakers in the audience, and so he makes reference to somebody up. I do the classic, that guy in the audience. It's the person down front that now I'm busting their chops, for the whole act. And so that person becomes that guy. And so then when Boo-Rah comes out, of course, he looks down at that guy, and now it's a running gag, right? Everybody knows, oh yeah, it's that guy. So he comes out and he says that he's, the secret agent, and he hunts down the troublemakers and he can make them talk. And I said, wait a minute, I can do that. He says, what? I can make people talk. No, you can't. Yes, I can. Well, you wouldn't be able to make me talk. So that's already a little, fun little thing that's going on there. Well, actually, I think I can. I don't think so. So then he says, all right, then step away. So up to now, my hand has been behind him, like I'm controlling him. He's on a stand.
Okay.
And so then I step away. It's like, okay, there you go. Well, then he'll slowly move around, and then you get the little ooh-ah out of the audience because he's moving by himself. But I don't want the whole thing just to be rooted in this little trick, in this little gag.
Right.
Now, okay, so he moves by himself. We get it. And so now, I kind of complete the bit there where, yes, indeed, he can now talk, and he's off away from me. So I say, all right, well, enough of this. I'm going to move on with the show. And he says, nope, I need to stay out here. I need to keep watch on this audience. So fine, you can stay here. So I leave him there. And then I pull out Aunt Tilly. And so now he's on stage and he's reacting by looking. And Aunt Tilly now looks over at him. And now I can have a conversation between Tilly and him because I can still, I'm holding Aunt Tilly and I've got the controller. So now I can do him and Aunt Tilly, and they can interact with each other. He can now interject snide comments as we continue on with the act. So he now becomes a heckler from the side that I'm controlling. I'm saying, cut it out, stop it. So as if, that's the whole idea with ventriloquism is that, we all know that you're the one doing it, but the goal is to make you forget that I'm the one doing it. Mm-hmm. So,
have you ever forgotten, like when you're doing the different characters, have you ever forgotten which character you were doing?
Oh yeah.
What's the save on that? Like with comedians, if you go blank, a lot of people have a line or whatever. Do you have a save if you accidentally throw the wrong voice to the wrong?
Well, I actually did it by accident one time, and it's now a part of my act where all of our voices get mixed up. So, but that happened by accident. And that was when I had Mac and Buford and we sang Ragmop, and I had the wrong one with the wrong voice. And so then we do, and that actually is a fairly, I don't know. It's a little trick that ventriloquists will also throw into their act where, we got our voices mixed up. Yes. Well, it did genuinely happen. And it was at that time. So I just kind of kept it there and developed it just a little bit. And so then one of the characters counts to 3, we get our voices back. So there's that. I don't know if I have a standard save for when that happens. I wouldn't say that it happens often.
Here's a line for you. Here's a line for you for a standard save. Oh, June. That's it. That's all you got to do. People are like, who's June? What is this?
Oh.
No, that was it. Don't you?
I was all ready to write down. I thought you were going to give me comedy gold right here.
No, that was it. That was just, Jude. That was it. So
okay, well,
but
let's
now
work on that one. Let's punch that one up a little bit more.
Yeah, that's Michelle's save when things go wrong. She just goes, "Oh, June."
Oh, June.
My friend Donna from Ireland, all she says every time I say something, she goes, "Ah, Michelle." That's it.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, we've. How long do these podcasts normally go? We've been at this for over an hour.
Yeah, we usually wrap it up around, we do 9 segments basically. So you're in segment 1 of 9. So we do 9 hours, and now we're actually getting ready to. I was getting ready to wrap it up when Michelle told me to shut up. So that's where
I didn't say that word. I said, wait, hold on for 1 second.
But that's
I can keep going, but I know that you also probably want to hold on to an audience as long as you can. So.
I think we do. Also, this will be the first time a guest has said, "You know what? Are we done with this?"
Wow, David.
I'm just looking out for you guys. Actually,
truly, we were about to wrap it up. Michelle, go ahead. One more thing. What do we got? We got at least 8 more hours.
You have what? 5 characters that you do plus you. So technically, we could do 6 hours. I'm just saying.
Yeah, each one is their own. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. We'll wrap this one up. And then we'll discuss the other 6 hours after this one's
Yeah,
over.
sure.
How about
Sounds
that,
good.
Michelle?
Sounds
So
good.
listen, friends, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of Laugh Support Podcast. We definitely want you to check out David Pendleton and all of his amazing friends. You can find David on Facebook, David Pendleton. On YouTube, you can find him at Anything Can Talk, and his website, as we said before, is anythingcantalk.com. We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. If you're watching us, you can actually listen to us on pretty much any of the platforms where you listen to podcasts, on Amazon, Apple Podcast, Audible, Spotify, Player FM, and others. And if you're listening and you want to see how amazing we are, plus Michelle's scary dead baby doll in the back that scares me every time, then you can always watch us on the Creative Motion Network on Roku TV. We are also on Vimeo and, of course, on YouTube. So I am going to wrap this up like I usually do and let you know that Jesus and Junebug loves you. And Michelle, why don't you make one of your friends back there talk and tell us goodbye?
All right. Thanks for listening. Bye.